Welcome to Guitar Center Sessions. I'm Nick Harcourt. We're here in the Vintage Room at Guitar Center in Hollywood. Please welcome our guests, The Cult. I'm Nick Harcourt. We're at Guitar Center in Hollywood. We're with The Cult. First of all, thanks for doing this, guys.
Thank you.
We've got Ian, Billy, John, and Chris, and they're here to talk about The Cult and all sorts of things, I guess. Why don't we start off by talking to you guys, though, about the beginnings of The Cult? 1983?
1883.
1883.
Yeah.
That is a long time.
I was in a band called Sudden Death Cult, and Billy was in a band called Theatre of Fate. And actually, Sudden Death Cult was opening for Theatre of Fate, so that's how Billy and I met. And at the time, it was like, we kind of gravitated towards Billy. In the band, we kind of like looked to him for guidance because we were like the kind of green kids from the north of England, and Billy was like the only guy from the northwest of England in Theatre of Fate. So we kind of always went to Billy and hung out with him and became friends. And Southern Death Cult were four very strong-minded individuals all going in different directions, and I just sort of felt that that was going to last a very short amount of time, and I wanted to do something, you know, that was going to be longer lasting and more serious. So I found that Billy had left Theatre of Hate, and so I decided to quit Southern Death Cult. My vision was to work with Billy because he was the best young guitar player that I saw playing in England at the time. I thought it'd be great, two of us working together. So I went down to London and we started what was Death Cult originally in 1983 in Brixton.
So when you guys first got together, was there an agenda at the beginning when you first came together musically, what you wanted to do? Did you know what you wanted to do?
I think I'd learned a lot when I was in the band Theatre of Hate. It wasn't my band. It was a great band, but it wasn't my band. I learned a lot of things not to do in running a band, and when we got together, I think we were pretty focused. We sort of didn't mess about. We kind of did have. We actually did have a bit of an agenda, didn't we? We sort of had a plan. Came up with a cunning plan.
What was the plan?
To be sitting here talking to you 1,000 years later.
I think it was like just to very quickly put a body of work together and go out and start playing. I mean, the agenda was really much more of a live thing. Get out and start performing, doing shows, and so the first agenda was like find other bandmates. So we recruited Jamie Stewart, and who's in a band called Ritual, and the drummer at Ritual as well, Raymond Taylor Smith, who was the son of a diplomat from Sierra Leone. And the four of us went out as Death Cult, and within 6 weeks, I think we'd written like 4 songs, and we pulled together some other songs, and we had enough songs to go out and tour. And then very quickly, we did an EP for Beggar's Banquet, Situation 2.
Right.
And that was all done. It was done so quickly. I mean, we were like straight away right into it.
What kind of music were you guys listening to at the time, though? I mean, what was motivating you? What were the influences on you at that time?
I think I just like rediscovered the Doors, but then I was listening to them in tandem with, you know, things like Public Image, Joy Division, like a lot of the post-punk things, and then things like Bowie and Iggy, those elements, and then things like Led Zeppelin, Free, Sabbath. It was all mixed together.
Stuff like that was kind of like around, and that was bands we could go and see, and then I kind of was playing kind of pre-punk, so I kind of was always into Free, Bad Company, and Thin Lizzy. Bands like that, kind of as a little kid, that's what inspired me to kind of learn guitar. And then right when I sort of first learned to play a little bit, punk happened, which kind of changed the whole musical landscape in the UK. Yeah, kind of. So that was kind of a monumental shift for me. That's right when I left high school, and punk happened, and I kind of got involved in that in Manchester. I actually did see the Sex Pistols in 1976. There's about 5 million people claim they were at these 2 shows in Manchester, and I was actually at the second one, and I still have the tickets and the poster to prove it. And I went to that, and that kind of changed everything a little bit. It just made music more accessible.
You mentioned these bands that you were listening to at the time, and you talk about Thin Lizzy, for example. Sex Pistols, completely opposite direction from Thin Lizzy.
Yeah,
I mean,
but it's funny you say that. If you actually I've been fortunate enough to get to know a lot of the bands, the original punk guys, and they all like Motley Hoople, Thin Lizzy. They like rock music.
They didn't say it at the time, though,
no,
did they?
Well, they didn't say, yeah, of course not. But, you know, I mean, in actual fact, that's what their influences were. Most like Iggy and Bowie, the MC5, and they liked some rock stuff as well, you know, pop. A lot of them had kind of a pop sensibility.
There were a few bands that really just everybody embraced, like Motorhead, Thin Lizzy. They were just really respected by everybody. You know, and it was like a lot of punks into reggae as well. There was a lot more sort of I don't know, there's a lot more of a community. It's kind of like if you're into music, even when like kids are into hard rock, I remember we'd just go out in the north of England, even come down to London, we'd go out with like kids who are into hard rock and punk music, even like, you know, I guess postmodern stuff, and we'd all hang out in the same pubs, you know, and we all kind of like, it wasn't as tribal as perceived.
Well, I'll hit your thing, trying to make you see. Well, living out, hidden dreams. spinning round the world. Midnight crush the girl. Bump expression, sensual tender smooth. She a black panther, you check black cool. Call me little honey, call me little baby, call me little honey and dance with me. Sweet soul sister, pushing to the down. Sweet soul sister, forever dancer, on and on. Hey, oh. Hustle and strut round the city of light. Hustle and strut, y'all. Hustle and strut round the city of light. Hustle and strut, shake no, no, no. Shake no, 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 hey. City of sin, come on and let me in. City of sin, oh! Sweet soul sister, push her to the down. Sweet soul sister, dancing, winding up, yeah. Sweet soul sister, keep pushing till the down. Sweet soul sister, she's dancing on it. Oh, 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 oh. Thank you.
So how did you guys write songs at the beginning together? What's the
Badly.
what's the genesis of a cult song?
Peter Gabriel.
And is and is it still the same?
Yeah, we just got together, literally. Ian came down to London. What he didn't tell you is he moved into my flat.
No, you invite me.
Yeah, and then he moved in my flat, and then that,
On the
and then,
couch?
yeah, literally, yeah. We shared a room. We wrote some tunes really quickly. And Ian was already signed. Sudden Death Cult was signed to a label, which was the label in England, Beggars Banquet. And one of the important things I think about the Cult is that even though a lot of our albums was licensed to major labels, we were kind of an indie band. Beggars Banquet's an independent label, and they exist as an organisation, which is an independent label, you know, for the last 30 years. And they started as a punk label. And, you know, we were signed to them, and I think that was one of the important things about us growing up, was there wasn't a lot of pressure initially for us to do anything other than be ourselves. So when we started writing, just the two of us, there wasn't, the record company kind of easy, they wanted us to just do what we felt. And I think that helped form us, and we made some interesting manoeuvres.
Once you guys started going out and playing, what was that like?
Wow, it was really heady. I mean, in the sense that our feet didn't touch the ground. It happened so quickly. I mean, Billy had already had several years. I mean, he'd been playing since he was, what, like 19, 18 years old? We started really young. I mean, I was 19 in Sudden Death Cult. So, like 20, 21, here we are, starting Death Cult. We're like kids. I mean, like, really, like, we were just really, really green. And then we're thrown into the cauldron of touring, recording. So it was really heady. And it's very difficult to sort of find your feet. You're growing up in that environment as well. So there's a lot of, you know, maturely, I mean, you're not ready for that kind of level of success and the pressures that go with it. And
Well, can you talk about that a little bit? Was that pretty quick? Like straight away there was some kind of success and there was like...
well, for me, it was immediate. As soon as I walked on stage with Southern Death Cult, third show, we had a review in Sounds. It's like that, bang, it was just straight away.
Right.
And it didn't stop until about 1995, when I just couldn't handle anymore.
Then it stopped.
Then it stopped. That was it. I'm done.
This one pictures of never-ending dreams. I can't see what these images mean. Locked inside me, can't set the rainbows free. Like perishing flowers, they sag and twist and die. There's a revolution. There's a revolution. Hey, feel a revelation. Got the congregation right here, right now. The joy of sorrow. What does revolution mean? It's you to save today. It's like wishing in the wind. Well, I'm a beautiful friend. They've all gone away. Like the waves. They blow and even die. There's a revolution. There's a revolution. There's a revolution. Yeah, there's a revolution. Kill the segregation. Man, the new citation. Revolutionary. Revelation. Right here. Right now. Joyous sorrow. What does revolution mean anymore? To save today, it's like wishing in the wind. Well, all my beautiful friends, they've all gone away. Like the wave. There's a revolution. There's a revolution.
various, I guess, evolutions of the band, and people have come and gone, obviously, and you guys have taken time apart and come back together. But I got these two guys sitting here as well.
Absolutely.
And I want to talk about I want to talk about the rhythm section of the band and how that's changed.
Actually, Chris and John is the most consistent rhythm section, and Mike, who plays rhythm guitar with us, you saw him when we were playing. These guys have been the most consistent lineup that we've ever had. So, in essence, this is like the real. I mean, the cult started with like my initial. When I thought the cult really got going was with Nigel Preston on drums. Even though he played on one album, Dreamtime, and Seesaw Sanctuary, there was a chemistry there that we could never replicate. And I think probably the closest chemistry we've ever had to that with Jamie and Nigel and Billy and myself is with Chris and John, you know, and Mike playing with us. So that's something that we have. It's like, it's more family. It's more integrated. I mean, it's so difficult, especially when we were like album cycle, tour cycle. So we had to pick up people very quick. It wasn't like you had a great selection. So we got, he looks great. He's got a great haircut, plays all right in the band. You know, 6 weeks later, you find they've got a horrible drug problem. You know, he's selling gear out the back door and I mean, all kinds of stuff. So, or some guys just like lost their heads in it, and you know, other guys went.
People left, right? I mean, Jamie was with us for, I don't know, about 8 or 9 years of consistent touring, and he just couldn't take the lifestyle anymore. He just was like, I can't do this anymore. Yeah, he just kind of couldn't handle it. At the end of the Sonic Temple tour, which was about a year long, he just was like, I'm done. It's been great, but I can't. He wanted to go home and live in England and have a quiet life, which I think he achieved.
Matt saw him jump ship.
Well, yeah.
Went to Guns N' Roses.
Well, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it was like a transfer that happened. I wasn't even aware of it. I mean, it was a bit rough. My father died 1 week, and the next week I'm getting told my drummer's just left the band. I was like, thanks, cheers. It was a rough time.
Not a good week.
No, but you know.
Well,
we're still friends.
Let me talk to
Absolutely.
Chris and John and ask you about working with these guys. You've been with them for 5 years now.
Almost 5 years.
Yeah.
About, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it, and how aware of the cult were you before you started working with them?
Well, I was always a fan of the cult. When I was a teenager, I used to wear the Love shirt. So a friend of mine turned me on to the Love record, and I've always loved it. And going back to 1993, I went to audition for you guys, but these two never showed up, so.
That's funny, I love
Like, what happened? I learned all the songs, and so it's pretty funny. Like,
I was in rehab.
13 years later, I'm in the band.
Yeah. I was around 10 years ago. Bob Rock called me up, and they were working on Beyond Good and Evil. So I just kind of popped in, never met them, was aware of the cult, of course, and was kind of like, wow, this is cool. But it was just like that. We were working that first day, like dogs, on like 10 songs or something. And that Beyond Good and Evil experience is really cool. That was 10 years ago. And so this is like another 5-year block. So, you know, I really feel like it's great to be part of a band that changes and grows. And these guys are still doing that, and we're part of that. So Beyond Good and Evil, to say what you heard tonight, Embers, is almost like heavy, and now it's like Zeppelin or something. It's versatile, you know, so I appreciate that.
Ian and Billy, come back to your relationship. You've parted ways a couple of times. Why did that happen? I mean, why did you guys need to take a break from each other?
Well, you kind of answered that, didn't you, before? You know, the first time it was we'd been going for basically 12 years, from like in a little flat in Brixton in London, the two of us just sitting down with a guitar writing the first Death Cult EP, writing these songs, Ghost Dance, Brothers Grimm, Christians, and something else. Those were the first 4 songs. From that to kind of like, the last gig we did in that whole period was like in Brazil, in Rio, and it all kind of just went pear-shaped in
No, but it'd been going.
Rio.
Then the threads have been hanging for quite a while. I mean, again, you know, it's like you grow up inside of a band and a touring environment, and it's like hermetically sealed. It's its own world. You know, it's kind of institutionalized in a way. And once you step outside of that into like regular lives, it's very hard to adapt into a regular life. I mean, we all came into this with different backgrounds, different upbringings, and I came in with like the classic lead singers, bag of broken home, you know, a lot of wreckage childhood, and went straight into a band. So, and that was, you know, something that I never dealt with until I started to get into my early 30s. I had to, you know, I had to deal with a lot of things psychologically that were like, I hadn't dealt with since I was a teenager. So
there's a certain amount of growing up goes on
Absolutely.
while you're in the pressure cooker
yes.
of trying to write songs together.
Yeah, but you know, you're basically your own parent. There's nobody really there. I mean, for the most part, people were quite happy to ply us with alcohol and anything else that we needed, as long as we got on the stage and kept performing, as long as we keep going out and generating an income for various managers and various record labels. And we were just complicit because we didn't have a clue, you know? I mean, there's times when you sort of like wrap yourself up on the floor on a bus, you cry your eyes out, you know? People talk about like, why do rock and roll, this whole thing about like, yeah, rock and roll, smash up a hotel room. People do that out of complete frustration and grief, and, you know, it happens. You destroy environments because you've just got nowhere else to put that energy in.
So, when you've taken these breaks, what always brings you back together?
The music. The music.
The music, man.
Well, it's family as well. It's family. I mean, Billy's
Right.
family. You know, we've grown up with each other, so
Yeah, we really have.
it's like family. So that's part of it. Family, missing each other, being around each other, and then playing the music together. I mean, performances have their own. I mean, people always come up to me and go like, hey, did you have a great time? What was it like? Did you have fun? What was it like? And I can't quite quantify what the experience is. Because as soon as you walk into a stage environment, I mean, this is a little bit difficult because this is kind of a, you know, it's a I don't want to say, but it's kind of a stage environment. But when you walk into an environment where it's like, there's quite a lot of energy in the rooms, there's a large crowd, playing with a loud amplification, it's atmospheric. You walk into that and it becomes more like a ritual. There's more of a ritualistic approach to it where the cognitive process and that goes away and it becomes more of an emotional process. And that's an addiction to that. And the love affair also with the melodies and the rhythms and the interaction with the audience. That's something you can't get that going to Ralph's, you know?
It depends what time you go.
Yeah. You're not going to get it on the back nine. The road that you spit upon has forgotten your name. You're so beautiful. Cinderella becomes a spark.
Watch your embers turn to flame. You're so beautiful, and everything is beautiful. Everything you need, my love, is hidden in these tears. There's nothing left to hide. There's nothing left to fear. Oh, run over, dogs, my love. No mortal hand can stop everything that's for my love. Simmer down to dust. Hold on. Through diamond eyes, you see, you speak to me, my love. Scream louder, they can't hear you. Stay with me, my love. Hey.
Magic that you call.
Spell that is your name. You're so beautiful, and everything you need, my love, is hidden in these tears, my love.
Bigness and greatness is one of my favorite quotes. I said that to Lars Ulrich. I said, bigness and greatness are two different things. Just because you've sold a lot of records doesn't mean it's good, you know.
Well, let's explore that a little bit then, because you know you've made records that have sold a lot.
Yeah, we've sold millions of records.
And you've made records that haven't sold as many.
That's correct.
So you know, if you're looking at the definition of success, I guess
I think each individual has their own interpretation of what success is.
right.
There's of course an external, what the culture celebrates as being successful.
Right.
You know, having your face on the cover of whatever magazine, being at the VMAs, that is supposedly what success is. I think being able to do what you want in terms of an artist, that you can support yourself as an artist, that you can you have the freedom to explore yourself and to record your music, tour, maybe make some music, that's very successful at any level. Selling millions of records is a byproduct, but you know what, it's strange. Like after Sonic Temple, for example, that sold 3-4 million records around the world. When that tour stopped, it was almost like it'd been done, so you had to start all over again, a new process. And it was great if you want to sit around and rest on past laurels, but we had to kind of reinvent ourselves, reinterpret ourselves. And we did that on several cycles, you know. And I think that now we're in a place where we were trying to play catch up. The scene was changing dramatically so quickly. You know, the whole Seattle thing had exploded. We were kind of out of step with that. So, you know, it was difficult to kind of get back into that cycle. The tours were so long. Whereas now I think we're really right where we're supposed to be.
So when you talk about the Seattle thing happening, what's that, 94?
It was 89, really. I mean, if you want to go into it, was like 89's Mudhoney, Nirvana, Mother Love Bone before they became Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, then it 90. You know, it's when it kind of hit that wave. I mean, Bleach, as soon as you heard Bleach, you knew there's something going on.
So how did that impact you guys, though? Because the scene had shifted.
We'd kind of reached like the point, we did a record called Ceremony, which I think I can safely say is neither of us his favourite record. And it was just a record, the machine demanded of us that we didn't know how to do anything else.
You had to put a record out.
Well, we didn't have to. We didn't know how to do anything else. And it was just, we'd been doing this for 8 years.
Did it out of habit.
We did it out of habit, and frankly, to me, it wasn't a good record. The chemistry wasn't right. The whole thing was just not, it just wasn't right. It's nobody's fault. It just wasn't a good record. We'd made several good records. Every record we'd made had sold more than the one before. We were achieving and doing what we felt comfortable with, and then suddenly, the magic had gone out of it. When you start in a band, you don't have any money. You're just happy to feed yourself. When you actually get some success, with success comes money, and you allow yourself, you can become a little prisoner with that. You don't have to do things. You know, when guys start making a lot of dough, you can actually just choose to, that's when a lot of bands get friction, because they don't have to do it. And there's periods where we kind of just, it's hard to explain. It was like there's a lot of external pressure to just keep doing it. Why would you change what's been a successful formula? At what point do you decide, you know, you have to be honest with yourself. And I think what grunge did, that whole Seattle movement, grunge is a bit like trite, but those Seattle bands, they were making the records I wanted to make, and I couldn't write them. And I was listening to that music going, I just can't do that at the moment. We kind of just bunkered down and just made a record. I think a record that was very important to Ian, personally.
Yeah.
The eponymous album. We did a very underproduced album that we basically wrote on the fly in the studio. I mean, you can actually, if you listen to it, you can hear people counting 2, 3 change, like, and that came out. I mean, that was organic. Guys sat in a room, and I think it was something that was important for Ian. It was kind of a cathartic thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, lyrically, you know, there was a lot of that stuff coming in. There was a lot of stuff came out that really hadn't been on any of our records before.
The lyrics were very, very important. It was very introspective. It was like the Primal Scream, curled up in the corner record.
So tell us about that.
There's a lot of revelations in that record.
It was obviously very personal. You were going through a lot of stuff.
Well, you know, it was like dealing with a lot of stuff. I mean, I just had my first child, my first son, and that's quite a profound experience. I think for me especially, I was like dealing with shadows, elements of my teenage life, childhood, which is, some of it's pretty intense. Grown in a very abusive household, very abusive, you know, environments, and moving around a lot. So there's like this kind of like sense of disconnect. I was trying to find, and here all of a sudden's a child. So it was it's quite profound. I'm having to look at myself in that way and deal with my own, like, where am I going now with my life? And so it's a really important record.
It preceded the breakup, or
How's-
whatever it was. It was like a break. It wasn't really like,
It wasn't really, I think it was more of a case that I just couldn't
we needed a break,
contain
not a
it
breakup.
anymore.
You just
know?
needed to stop.
You just
Yeah.
need to stop.
By the sound
He
of it.
just,
Precisely.
he jumped
Right.
But
first.
I had to stop. I mean, it was the point. It's amazing that. I mean, there's things like in 1987, I was on we were touring Billy Idol, and you know, we'd been drinking pretty heavily that night, and a few other things, and I ended up being found in the back bus asphyxiating. I've choked on my own vomit. In fact, Billy Idol saved my life. Had he not found me, yeah, I would have died. I would have died on that bus, no question. And my response was like, yeah, great, let's go out party.
Let's carry on.
Let's keep going. Yeah, but I had the reputation for that. I mean, people, you know, it's amazing what a lot of, you know, it's been put on the band and me especially in terms of what my back, I never was self-promoting. I never kind of like went on about being a crazy rock and roller, self-destructive or anything. It wasn't nothing to do with that. It was the fact that inside it was just too much. It's too much.
Hey you, girl, wild, honey child, get out of control. Every time you are near me, I'm a wolf child, baby. Howdy for you now, my heart's beating fast. Come on, hey, rock the power, hey. And I won't shout girl, how to feel wild power. Start of my dreams, get beautiful, baby. Hey you, sweet sensation of a nation, of my soul. Situation, you're an angel, baby. Howdy for you, girl. My heart is beating fast. Come on, hey, rock the power, and I won't shout, girl, how to feel wild power. Start of my dream, get beautiful thing, wild power. I love you every hour, wild power. Burn down the night, set the world out here. Sweet Gene Vincent. Wild power. I'm a wolf child. How to feel wild power. Start of my dream. Yeah, beautiful thing. Wild power. I love you every hour. Wild power. Burn down the night. Set the world alight. Baby. Thank you.
We know that you took time apart and did other projects as well. What have those brought back? I mean, you were with the Doors for a while. You
Yes.
had another band. What did you bring back from those experiences to the Cult?
Tom Vittorino, our manager, had kind of encouraged Ray, Robbie, and John to get back together and perform together again, and because he'd been working with Robbie, I thought it was a great idea. And I was very good close friends with Danny Sugarman, who was kind of Doors' intermittent manager between the early 70s and, you know, I guess up to like the early 2000s. So Danny brought me in, and it clicked. We did one show. We did the Storyteller show, VH1, and then it went on. And I sat down with Ray and Robbie, and they asked me if I wanted to continue doing more shows. So it's like a dream. It was like I didn't want to. I just thought that I knew it was going to be a high pressure gig, but I knew I couldn't walk around for the rest of my life saying, I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd gone out and done that second show or third show, and it just kept going. Eventually, I did 150 shows. And I think the thing that really working with Ray and Robbie really taught me was the way their music. So we kind of came from a punk rock background, where there's something happening all the time. It's like constant guitars or drums or whatever. These guys were huge spaces in their music. So you have to hold the space. So in a lot of ways, you have to be very grounded psychologically to hold that space. So that's what really happened, is I was put in a position where there was so much emotional voltage going through me that I had to learn to hold the weight of that space.
And it sounds like you learned something from the
I learned
experience.
immense. I got a university education, really. I mean, I really felt that I learned. It was about unlearn. It was about, as a performer, learning to hold the space, to be very present, to be very, 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 very present. And, you know, bringing that back to the band. I perform differently now as a singer. For me, singing the song, I used to run around the stage like a maniac and jump off PAs and smash everything. And I thought that's what I had to do as a performer, but, you know. So it became, with the Doors, it was much more about like, you know, holding space, singing the song. You know, dropping into it a lot more. It's a lot more weighted. And that's why a song like Embers is able to happen now. We have a maturity. Whereas, I mean, like, John and Chris, you know, have grown as well as musicians, and the four of us are able to play that music because we all have that, I guess, we've done work on ourselves, we've reached that place, that maturity as musicians. And there's no way I could have done a song like that when I was 23. There's no way. There's no way.
Yeah, you are the sun.
Let's talk about today. Let's bring it up to date. Music industry has shifted so well. There isn't a music industry anymore. How does a band like the Cult, who have a very illustrious history and career in the past, adapt to what is essentially a whole new paradigm?
Well, for me, we just do what we did when we first started, which Ian said earlier in the interview. We go out and do gigs, fundamentally, and also it's very simple. When we feel we've written enough good songs, we record them. I mean, it's nothing's actually, the delivery has changed, but essentially, it's still people just telling their story. You can overcomplicate it and overthink it, or you can just do. I choose to do, you know, the simple route. We do the same stuff. We just write a simple song and record it. How you get it out there and how you make people aware of it now has changed and all that. But essentially, it's still, you know, people, and that's when people talk about the state of the music business and bands. And okay, the business might not be the same as it was, but music, it's just people getting together writing songs. They use different devices. They don't always use guitars. It doesn't really matter. Eventually, it will come down to a good song.
I'd encourage any young artist to, as much as they focus on their music and getting better as musicians and songwriting and listening to, you know, influences and stuff, is also to pick up cameras and start playing with visual elements. So you don't have to wait for some guy, hi, I'm a director, because he's got a hat on. You can direct your own film. And I think that's a phenomenal element. So you can get in the room with some great film as well. And I think really, you know, really think about how you want to look and present yourself is very, very important. And have your basic philosophy together. So they're important elements.
Do you think the visual aspect of it has changed? I mean, it used to be, we talked about Bowie a little bit earlier, you talked about Lady Gaga now.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of difference,
well, that's Ziggy
really.
Stardust right there, for a start.
Well, exactly. There's not a lot of difference between what he was doing and what she's doing from the spectacle point of view.
Well, the only thing is, you got no Mick Ronson up there.
Well, that is true.
Who gave it, when you look at Bowie in that period, he was doing something incredibly theatrical and quite dangerous, in the sense that if you imagine doing that in the UK in the early 70s, it's pretty radical, bisexual, makeup, kabuki, insane. But then you got Mick Ronson, who's this working class, blue collar guy, who's one of the most, you know, gifted guitar players of his generation. What he played was transcendental. Just that sexual energy of the guitar player. I don't see that in a lot of young players. It's almost like they're afraid to go let that come out in their playing. There's like that kind of, that's why I think there's so much angst in things like, you know, Scream, that kind of things, because there's a sexual tension. And it's like, maybe we should listen to a bit more blues. The blues has gone out in the music, the sexual element's gone out in music. It's kind of gone from the waist down to the neck up. So everything has to be quantified, intellectualized, processed. Maybe a little less information, some rooms that are so less distractions, and maybe getting more in touch with your sensuality and that kind of thing. Then you can find your inner Lady Gaga, whatever that is. And I think it's okay for men to play with, you know, clothes, makeup, whatever you want to do. But when you see a load of kids coming into the room, they've got makeup, long hair, tight clothes that look kind of androgynous, maybe a bit sexual, that look good, sexy, powerful, that's intimidated by that, they will start beating that, going, it's lowbrow, it has no place in the culture, and it shouldn't be allowed, you know. It's okay if it's Bowie, it's okay if it's something iconic from 20, 30 years ago, but not now. It's ridiculous.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's fear, jealousy, maybe being uncomfortable because you are now an authority. There's a lot of bloggers out there who are authorities. They're
Self-anointed?
Self-anointed. Thank you for helping with that.
You're welcome.
They're absolutely self-anointed authorities. And everyone's looking to them for information. I mean, the amount of authority on, like, say, iTunes, for example, when you go to look at a piece of music, there's posts from everybody. You don't know what anybody's background is. I think that you've got to find out for yourself, like we did when we were kids. Because, like, the Pistols came along. It wasn't like everybody got to the Pistols. I mean, you walk down the street dressed as a punk rocker, you're more likely to get a good beating, which I did get. I had 7 guys drag me and throw me under a bus one day. That was the kind of instant critique you got on your musical taste. which you don't get from Pitchfork Media, but you do get a 7.2 or a 4.3 based upon how good the coffee was in Brooklyn, you know, that morning.
When they were writing the review.
When they were riding on their fixed gear bicycle with their little beard and having absolutely having no life experiences whatsoever than living vicariously through a collection of krautrock records they don't even know where they emanated from. And we have too much of that in the culture.
Germany.
Say no more. Well, listen, guys, it's been a pleasure to, first of all, have you play for us.
Thank you.
And secondly, to have a conversation with you. And I want everybody to put their hands together and please thank the Cult. So you're not sold on the indie hipsters at all by the sound of things?
No, I think that they're clogging up the arteries with nonsense and mediocrity, and they should go away and let the kids rock.